Yeah.
I have a question. With regard to rectifier tubes.
Yeah.
Some builders say that you should use an old tube. Some say you have to compensate for the fact that today our voltages are higher. And how do you know what to look for in rectifier tubes?
I think you should have lots of them. And I say that in the book. I mean, rectifier tubes wear out, just like power tubes do. I mean, you guys all pay enough that you're running out of power, wearing out power tubes every 6 months, easily. And rectifier tubes are basically power tubes, and they're going to wear out. Even a new one, you know, you get a JJ that's really hot and stiff, which is great. It's going to wear out in 6 months, but it doesn't mean you have to throw it away. You can keep it, and if you want to be squishy, use it. You know, and if you want a new one, you know, you can swap them back and forth or whatever. The voltages being higher these days, the power line voltage is higher, but the voltage in an amp, the voltage in the Marshall Plexi is the only other amp of that range that I know of that has that kind of voltage is my Ganesha. Everything else is at least 50 volts lower than that. They're too chicken to go that high because the tubes aren't as good. An old Muller tube, you can put 600 volts on it easy. 800 volts, sorry, 800 volts. And a Marshall Plexi's got about 520, but a newer Marshall probably has 450, 475. So it's you know, safety things, worrying about the tubes, you know, especially Chinese tubes, they aren't going to handle the voltage. JJ tubes, they'll handle it. You know, a lot of the European tubes are really good now.
What about tubes on the market? Do you have any recommendations?
Tubes on the market now, I mean, they change a lot, especially the 12AX7s. They're constantly changing them. Even if they'll call them the same name and they'll change the way they're making them, it's really frustrating to me. Power tube-wise, JJs are just indestructible. They're really good, especially EL34s and EL84s, those, and KT88s. Those are really, really good tubes. The Svetlana ones, well, no, sorry, that's the Winged C ones. I go on about this in the book. This is really a messed up thing. There's only a few factories. JJ has a factory. There is a factory in Russia called Svetlana. And there is a factory in Russia called the Reflector. And those are the main three that you want to be dealing with. The American company that owns the Reflector factory bought the name Svetlana in this country. So when you get a Svetlana tube, it's actually from the Reflector factory. So it's a mess. You want to, when I say Svetlana, they have a C with 3 bars on each side, a winged C they call it. And it says SED, Svetlana Electron Devices, under it. Those are really good tubes also, especially their 6L6s and their 5881s, very good. And I forgot to mention, JJ has this tube called a KT77. Very, very cool tube. It's kind of like, if you had 6L6s and EL34s, and a KT66 is like here, and a KT77 is like here. So 6L6s are smoother and break up easier, and EL34s are crunchier and more gain. You have these 2 other tubes in the middle now that are cool to play with.
How should we be dealing with you know, wall outlet that push out too much voltage, you know, 125, something like that?
Yeah, they all put 125 out nowadays. Yeah.
How would you approach that for old amp at some point? You know, like old Plexis or old Fenders. Should you go for some kind of variac, a little box that cuts a bunch of holes?
Yeah, you know, if you really had an old amp that you were worried about, and I know Neil Young with his freaking Deluxe, Tweed Deluxe, is really, he's like, he knows how many volts are coming out of the wall by how it sounds. Has a variac and sets it to it. He actually has 455 Tweed Deluxes, but he only plays one of them.
What does it do to it? I have a Tweed Deluxe.
You do?
Yeah, what does it do to it? I didn't even know that. I would plug it in the radio. I don't know if it's 125, 130 coming out of the plug.
I don't know what he's hearing exactly. I would imagine as the volts go up, it's brighter and punchier.
Okay, so sound is not to destroy the amp. It doesn't harm the amp.
Well, it's harder on the transformers for sure. And if you have a really actual Tweed Deluxe from the 50s, you may, if you wanted to be really anally retentive about your amp, I would take my transformers out and put in mercury magnetics transformers. I honestly would do that. If you really were concerned about resale value of your amp, it's not going to sound quite as good, but if you turn it down with the variac, then you're safe.
Okay.
But those transformers are right at the edge of their ability already. And if you're going to run it at 125 volts instead of 115, which it wants, you're asking for trouble. If I was playing around with an amp that was, you know, that valuable and that cool, I would definitely use a variac.
Which variac do you suggest?
They're all the same. They're all they are is transformer, and it's just turning it. It's an auto transformer they call it. And you just across here is however much you got, and then you just take a tap off of it. So it's like a ratio thing. I only want 90%.
Okay.
All the variacs you could possibly buy are way more powerful than your amp needs. Like my variac will handle something like 1,500 watts, and it's a run-of-the-mill variac. So I would
Go for it, ballpark figure?
less than 200 bucks.
I've
Yeah.
seen some people buying expensive power cords,
Yeah,
and we see that with the guitar amps and also.
Carl's got one here.
amps.
yeah.
Is there any purpose to that?
I think there's a purpose up to a point. I mean, if it's $100 or 200 bucks and it's a nice core with really good connectors on it, yeah, I think there's a purpose. When it's $1,500 and it's gold, I don't know. I know. I've seen them like that. And in Japan, they seem to be really into that, really into these high-end power chords. I think I make some suggestions in the book if you really want to get weird about your power. You know, run your amp at 240 volts instead of 120. That would be you would cut the amps in half, so the amount of current going through your cord would be half, and your cord would be half as much interfering with your stuff. I mean, most power cords you get with like a regular amp suck. I completely agree. And the connectors really suck. You can get hospital grade connectors. They usually have a green dot on them, and the little things coming out are solid instead of folded, and they're much better. Not all cords that have hospital grade connectors necessarily have a good cord to them. You want to make sure the cord itself is good. The wiring in your house is the diameter is measured in gauge, and the wiring in your house is probably 12 gauge coming to your wall outlet. So you would like to have at least 12 gauge coming from the wall to your amp. And the smaller the number, the bigger the diameter. I mean, you could get a 10 gauge cord, that'd be cool. I don't get an 8 gauge cord, I don't think you need it. You're not running a welder, you know, but I think the biggest thing on a power cord is if it's shielded. And I don't think I go into this in the book enough, but you can buy shielded power cords, and it's just like a guitar cord where there's the power and the neutral and all that are in the middle, and on the outside there's like foil, and then it's wrapped in black or whatever. You don't see the foil, but all the RF hum and everything in the air, you know, like that gets into your guitar pickups when you have the fluorescent lights on, all that can get into your power cord and come into your amp. So if you have a shielded power cord, that can help a lot, especially if you have like a rack full of electronics. You want to have all shielded power cords and put them to one side and get all your other stuff and put it to the other side.
You talked a lot about the selections of a power tube.
Yeah.
You talked as well about the selection of the speakers in there.
I do. I mean, there's a lot of speakers, but I definitely talk about some specific ones. I talk a lot about Celestion ones because those are the real standard ones, and Jensen's, and some of the new Eminence ones. Carl got this amp and it had Eminence Governor in it, which I just love. I love those things. And he put, what did you put, 2 KT88s and 2 6550s in this amp. So with those big tubes in there, this amp is not 88 watts, it's probably 100, 110. So he blew up the speaker. So, which is good, that's a good thing. So he put in a, what do you got in there now?
Red, white, and blues.
So that's another Eminence, that's
Yeah,
like the Patriot.
140
Yeah.
watts.
Which I'm really like, and I think it sounds really good.
Yeah, I like it.
You know, I like the Eminence. They have these 2 series of speakers they came out with called the Patriots and the Red Coat. So they're supposed to emulate Jensen's and Celestions, and I think they're really good. And Celestions, you know, it's not just made in China; it's a Chinese company. They're bought by the Chinese. So I'm not saying anything negative about that, but it's not Celestion that you're thinking of anymore. Some of the speakers are made in England still, and they're very expensive. The blue ones and the Heritage Series ones are there. I think the cheapest ones are 250 bucks, easy. And they're good. I happen to have some, they're good. But these Eminence ones are very good. I mean, I know we've all heard of Eminence for a long time probably, and they're like, yeah, those are pretty good, but they're not, you know, They don't got the mojo going on like the other stuff does. I think they do now with these two new series. I mean, I think this speaker sounded quite nice this evening. And it's supposed to be more of a Jensen-y kind of thing. Well, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope that was fun. Hi, this is Dave Zimmerman. Come check out my book at Bootsy Tone. Thanks a lot.
I'm a big collector. I'm still, it's kind of like buying a big box, but not opening it yet.
Oh, okay.
So this is gonna help me.
What's your name?
Jean-Louis.
Is that not smiling enough?